Okay, so yeah, well, welcome. Welcome to my talk about body presence in VR, or the background behind Goliath VR for some of you who might know the game already. And so what is the deal with body presence in VR? I mean, the main problem is, like, once we were a head-mounted display, we just lose track of our environment and thereby lose track of our own bodies. So what we need is a new body representation inside the VR. And this can be just hands, or it can be a full body, but full body is rarely seen. So, but what do we need the body representation for? Well, first of all, there's the whole part with the interaction inside the environment. But the shape of the body is also really important, and it makes a difference. It can be a point of reference, can be important for player identification, and it also influences the behavior of the player inside the virtual environment and even outside, as a study has shown also. And the other thing is that the more similar the owner's, like the representation body to the owner's real body is, the stronger the immersion can be, which has been shown in a study, in a study, but not in VR yet. Like, that was in a normal computer game study. And yeah, so player representations. So commercial VR usually uses the hand and the head that we have. And avatar movement can be sometimes implemented, and usually uses inverse kinematics, so you don't really get like where's the elbow position actually, but you go like, okay, the hand is here, the head is here, so if the hand is as close to the head, then the elbow is probably somewhere here or here, so it just estimates it. Other player representations that actually use the real body have been done in iToy, but of course that's pretty much outdated because it's 2D, and I don't know where that trend went, but people don't play that anymore. And the other way is also to use the kinect, which can calculate the real bones, or the bone of information of the player, and can also get some real mesh information about the depth of where each pixel of the player is. And the problem with avatars is, if you use replace the actual player with an avatar, is you have limitations with collision detection, which means that you usually use two different models, one for collision detection and one for the detailed eye candy thing. And yeah, but to that later. Yeah, the thing with the real person's shape, it's usually not used. I found very few examples where the actual body of the player is really used. And the one example is in iToy Lemmings. It's a really old game. I couldn't find, I never tested it. I could only see it on YouTube videos. And it seems really fun. And it's actually using, like, as you can see here, like, those are walking on his thumb. So it's quite detailed. So they're using the real body information of the player. Yeah, but as I told before, the thing with the avatar is you have one collision model and one visual model. And so mostly the avatar is just a decoration, and the collision model is for the functionality. And sometimes the difference between those can be noticeable, and especially noticeable in a scenario with increased proportions. So my goal for Goliath VR was to create a VR game in which the real physical body of the player actually matters. Therefore, I was using extreme proportions, and I was trying to get as close to body similarity as possible, to maybe increase the perceived immersion. And what I wanted to have is a second player to explore the one body of the first player. And so the rule for me was that I have to use the same model for collision detection that I use for the visual appeal. So, and what the term that I came up with, because I didn't find a proper term for how you call it when you use the real image data of the player inside the game. So what I call it is real-time created body representation. I don't know. Yeah, it's RTCBR, yeah. And so what I did is I used the depth image data that you get from the Kinect, used the index buffer to isolate the player's pixel, and created cubes out of pixels. And that's pretty much it. So this is how the 3D representation of the player is created. And the main concept for Goliath VR was to have 2 players, one big player, Goliath, one small player, David. The floor is lava, obviously. And one goal, which can only be reached in cooperation. And yeah, for those of you who haven't seen how that looks, okay, this mech does not behave like it should. That again. Screen. Okay. Yeah. So things learned. Yeah. Well, that has not been done too often. So there was almost no reference of how do you deal with problems of collision detection if you actually want to use the real body's image data. And one of the reasons why it's probably not been done to use the actual body for collision as well is because of performance reason. The other problem is it's just too glitchy. As you could see, like we have these flickering pixels all around the silhouette of the player, which is just part of the problem that once you move from here to here, you have like a whole set of pixels that disappear on this side and appear on that side, and that just makes a big problem in the game as well. And the other reason why it's probably not been done so many times is the necessity. Who really needs it? There's just probably very few use cases where you actually need the actual body to collide with, because most of the time your player avatar is maybe a third or maybe even a fourth size of the screen that you're playing on, so you don't notice if it's a collision model or if it's actual the collision with the real player. And the other problem, of course, is at the moment, where do you get the data from? Because I don't see many kinects around anymore. And that brings me to my next point, which is Kinect does not do badly for head and body tracking. As some of you might see outside where I exhibit the project, I'm using an Oculus Rift DK2, and I'm using a Kinect for the body and for the head tracking. So I'm not using the normal head tracker of the Oculus Rift. And I mean, it's not perfect, but it works well. It works well enough. Some people who have a lot of experience with VR complain about it, but those who have not so much experience with it, or they don't notice it, they just can use it intuitively, which means that the Kinect could be a good solution for head and body tracking. And I don't know if any of the big companies have something planned for that, but I hope that that would be a future development, because it would give you so much more information about the actual space that people are playing in, and the body as well. And the other thing that I learned was people don't seem to notice bad frame rates when they're playing Go Live VR. I don't know why, but I hear all this stuff about like you shouldn't go below 90 frames or you shouldn't go below 60 frames, and I feel like most of the time I'm not hitting 40 probably, not even. I mean I'm in the good space, in the good places of the display area. I have 25 or 29, something like that. But I even drop below that, you know? And maybe it has something to do with the scenario, like that people feel like they're playing a giant, which makes them move more cautiously and carefully. But frame rate does not seem to be, doesn't have to be that high. And the other thing that I learned is people love to see their own bodies. As you could see in the video, people start dancing because they can see their own body in third-person perspective, and they start making moves and trying out what they can do with their new body, which is their own body, which is weird that they start doing stuff once they can see it as a third-person perspective. And the other thing is people hate it when their own body stand in their way of the game, which is the problem, because I'm using the third-person perspective so that people get an awareness for their own body, where it is and what's the shape at the moment. But also it's all the time in the way of where they're looking into the level. So they're all the time, where's that? Where's this? I don't see it. I only see my body. And that is the big problem that I'm still working on, to find a way to show the full body, but at the same time show all of the level. And yes, that's pretty much all for that. And thank you for your attention. And curious about your questions. Questions? Okay. Magst du das dabei nehmen? Ja. Einfach einschalten. Hello. Hello.
You said that the player sees himself in third-person perspective. Why didn't you make it one? I'm sure you tried, but I just wanted to know what reasons you had not to do it from first person, because it seems like a lot of the stuff is more with your arms, and you could kind of do it that way.
Yes, about that part of it is created. Part of the reason is the way that the project was created. It was created because it was created to deal with avatar representations in comparison to the real-time created body representation. That was part of my master thesis, which I had to study and do a psychological study about it. So if you just have your hands, it's kind of like, are those my hands or are those not? Well, I don't know. It's not that important. But if you have like your full body shape, you can kind of recognize it. Hey, this is me. This looks like me. The height, how tall I am, my shape. That is one part of the reason. The other part is because I wanted the player to use his body as a bridge for the smaller player. And if you only have the hands and you let the small player climb on top of you, the moment he reaches like your shoulder, he's gone. He's away from your view field. Especially if you have a view field just like that, you have almost no awareness about your body. You would like really have to look like this and go like, okay, where is everything? Because you just have this view field. And that's the reason why I put the camera behind it and make it a third-person perspective.
Okay.
I'm just curious about, did something in the players change, like they playing with each other, like cooperatively? Did something like in their demeanor change after playing before. I mean, there's this little guy, another player, right, climbing on top of the big player, and it's like, he's right here on my body, and it kind of does something in your head, I guess, but you have this like psychological evaluation and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, did something in the relationship change, or did they talk afterwards, or what happened? Maybe you could elaborate on that.
In the psychological study, it was always me playing the small player. So I didn't evaluate that. I was just evaluating or trying to find out if something in the immersion changes, if someone is playing himself or playing another blocky avatar. So I can't say from a psychological study point of view, I can't say anything to that. But what I noticed, of course, is that sometimes strangers play this together, and I feel like after that they're friends, kind of, you know? Because it's really also, I have this when I'm on exhibiting on festivals, I have this headset communication thing installed, so they kind of have like a private acoustic room that they're talking to each other, and of course the small player has a better overview over the small details, so he can tell the big player, hey, I need your hand a little bit lower, a little bit to the front, a little bit to the side, put me up here, put me down there. And so I think it's a very intense communication game, actually. And yeah, I hope to think that maybe even friends have built over it. So.
Okay, thank you. More questions afterwards. Wolfgang will be around, and Alexander Krenos is already waiting to do the next talk.